It's time for us to go on the grind. Now, normally it's on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but today in particular, it's all about that African hustle, that continental grind. I'm joined by the managing director of Allan Gray Namibia, Mr. James Mnyupe, who's about to break down his story for us.
I was born in Tanzania back in, well, let me not reveal when that was, but needless to say, back in the 80s, I was born into a country that had colorful tapestry and kangas, and I grew up in Dar es Salaam, at least for the first 4 years. And then because of my extremely enterprising mother, and this is a good time to give a big shout out to all the women out there. It was International Women's Day yesterday.
Yep.
My mom then sort of emigrated all of us to Kenya. I was about 4 years old, and I sort of then grew up in Kenya for a wee bit before I landed in Namibia in 1998. But needless to say, it's really on the shoulders of giants such as my mom and my sister, so women in general, that I am where I am today, for sure. Depending on which James you spoke to, that changed like the weather. I think back in the day, I wanted to be a cop. I think as I grew up and I saw the hazards of that, I sort of changed and I wanted to be a doctor. I suppose help a lot of the victims that the cops are still trying to help.
Absolutely, yeah.
But that's when life really sort of hit and the rubber hit the road. We just didn't have money for me to go to medical school, and so before you know it, I had to sort of be quick on my feet, and I did my bachelor's of business administration, and then the life just sort of brought me to where I am. So really, I had to be quick on my feet and just adjust to the circumstances, for sure. I was anything but a straight A student. I was actually very active, so always running around and doing lots of sports, I guess. And it took a lot of molding. And this is why I give such sort of compliments to my mom. It took a significant amount of molding, and my mom moved me actually from one school to the other. Not too many, but there was one particular move I remember. She moved me from Lions Primary in Kenya to a private school. It was an Indian school called Shalalji Nangpar Academy. And she had to pay a significant amount of school fees to get me into that school. And it was when I was in that school that the utility of success and hard work became apparent after she specifically spoke to one of my my class teacher, Mrs. Mwangi, who was actually also a woman. And so between my mom and Mrs. Mwangi, they super straightened me out. And it was from back then, I think that was 98, 97, that I really started sort of becoming really a very productive student. And then I just never looked back from there. But so it wasn't really my doing. It was more coaching and mentoring and just the plight of a woman who wanted what was best for her kids. Absolutely. Look, when I was in school, school was the primary thing I did. I did a lot of hockey, I guess, here at St. Paul's. Growing up, I enjoy working out. I bike and I ride every now and then. In terms of a side hustle, I've never really had like a job on the side. It's sort of lately, sort of call it the past 2 or 3 years, that the government has actually asked me to consult sometimes for them. And so I find myself sometimes on a PPP ministerial committee for the Minister of Finance, or I was extremely privileged to have served in the high level panel with a group of exceptional people. And then as a person in business, I was asked to sit on various boards, and I really said no thank you to all of them because I really wanted to give my all to my primary employer, in fact my only employer, which was Allan Gray. But lately I have sat on a board for Gondwana, which is, as you know, a tourism company. But even then, the money that they offered in terms of directors' fees, I specifically asked them to donate to charity. And so I picked 2 charities my family did, and the earnings from that, from those board seating fees, went to that particular charity. Now, look, I've been told that I need to sort of think hard about that decision, but so far that's where I am. As it is humility, and believe it or not, even probably built on a bit of failure. So I joined Allan Gray in 2010 as a trainee investment analyst, and I really wanted to be involved in investments. And I had this passion since university. I met a good famous professor of mine called Mark Bunting, and when he lectured us on derivatives, I was so passionate about it. So after finishing off my articles, I joined Allan Gray. Look, I was super fortunate. I moved to Cape Town for 6 months. This was during 2010. So literally the World Cup happened right next to our offices. I was lucky enough to be able to go to that with the help of actually my wife, believe it or not. So I did that, and then I found myself back in Namibia. And before I started getting settled in Namibia, I moved to Johannesburg for a year. And I did private equity there with Allan Gray, but we were just studying the concept with our own money. And when that particular experiment, I can probably call it, was put on ice, I was keen to move on to another sort of asset management firm to pursue, portfolio management. And it was then that my mentor within Allan Gray and my boss called Tando Mkhlambiso said to me that he thought I had potential to really sort of make a difference, lead, and build on the foundations of the Namibian business. And so if you look at that, it wasn't by design. I didn't interview for the job. Tando saw potential in me. I had the humility and I dared to listen. But at the same time, it was formed on what one could consider a failure in the private equity space, or not really a failure, but we decided not to do it, right? So how did I end up here? A mixture of chance, a mixture of other people sort of spotting talent, and then a mixture of just daring to try something you didn't do before. To be honest, so at work we've done this sort of personality test, I guess, but it really measures motivation more than behavior. It's called the Enneagram. And on the Enneagram, you guys should check it out. It's actually quite interesting. I scored as a 3. Now, a 3 is what they call a competitive achiever. And I remember when I was super small, my brother used to say to me, "You can't be this competitive all the time." And I was like, why not? What's the problem with that? And he was like, one day you'll be playing pool with your girlfriend and you're just going to want to beat her, and he's like, that's not going to be a very sustainable way of living. And I was like, what's this guy talking about? Look, as I've grown up, I've learned to be more humble and I've sort of, my rougher edges have become smoother. But so I think at the core, I do have a big desire and passion to win. But lately, as you grow older, when I look at why it is I do what I do, especially some of the work where I volunteer my time, whether it's to consult with the state or other entities, I start thinking about my son, for example. I have a 1-year-old, and I think about what sort of reality do I want to leave for him? What do I want him to think of his father? What did I do with the talents and the opportunities and the people who backed me? What difference did I make in community? And so then you become really sort of humble. Sometimes you get pretty emotional. But if somebody asked me a why, it would probably be to leave a better world for Malachi, who's my 1-year-old, even for Ernst, who's our 14-year-old, than I sort of found. So far, that's where I'm at. Look, the why evolves all the time, but I don't think this one's going to change anytime soon, because I'm hoping I'm a dad for the rest of my life.
That's right.
Yeah. On my way here, I was listening to your station. It's a beautiful radio station.
Thank you.
And there was a song, I think it was sort of your local song for the day. And this guy was talking about money and
chief.
his debit orders. And I just couldn't help but laugh. Because, when I was in varsity, all I wanted was my PlayStation and my own TV. And I used to say, if I get my PlayStation, I'll sit on the box of the PlayStation. I don't even want furniture. I just wanted a PlayStation and a high-definition television. And then eventually I wanted some money. I wanted to build my balance sheet. And I've had the opportunity to do that. And now I sort of think about what it is do I really want to define as success. And when I thought about it, I'll sort of ask your listeners to envision life as a bowl of water. So call it the elixir of life, right? And I realized that we consume from that bowl, right? I got advice from my mentor. My mom gave up her car to send me to that school I was telling you about. My wife has endured an extremely challenging husband sometimes. My PA and my staff at work endure a really sort of trying boss who's always trying to push the boundaries. So as I consume from them, I would love to be able to put back more than what I consumed from all these people, but also just from the planet, from Namibia, from Africa. I think if I'm able to define myself as a contributor, a builder, more than a consumer, I think that might be a better definition of success for me, and something I'd love to pass on to my kids as well.
Absolutely.
Give back more than what you consumed.
Absolutely love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this is, you can write so many articles and go into so many interviews about this one. Look, for me, I think it boils down to leadership, right? Because the continent has it all. It has the demographics, it has the natural resources, it has the arable land, it has great weather. So in theory, we should really be out there at the cusp and at the forefront. And for me, I think I would ascribe it to great leadership. And for me, leadership is more the willingness to serve, more than the willingness or the desire to lead and to have power. And so selfless leadership and the concept of servitude, like really doing things to empower others, right? And typically, I mean, geez, I don't know how many of you all are a fan of Oprah, but Oprah gave and she always got more than what she gave, right? Similarly, if you look at my definition of success, it's hopefully I get back more than what I've invested. And it's at the cornerstone of investments, right? A return on equity, I put in $100, I should be able to generate 110 for my clients. But the key thing is exactly that, working for my clients. If I put my clients at the forefront of everything I do, I typically will reap even better rewards. And so, look, to be honest, what I've come to realize lately is I too am considered a leader. I mean, I just used to be a young guy trying to get that PlayStation or whatever, right? The side hustle. Yeah. But now people do look up to me. And so then I think about what sort of leader would I want to be. I think it would be that. It would be somebody who's very, very concentrated on serving and uplifting others, and in the process, the community around myself. And so then I'd be doing a big justice to the country, the community, the village, the household. I think Mother Teresa had a pretty good quote that I'd like to sort of share with your listeners. She said, and I'm probably misquoting her, but she said something like, if you want to be great, go home and start building your family, right? If you want to change the world, I think she says, go home and start building your family. So it starts right there.
That's right. Causing that ripple effect into the rest of the community, the nation, and the world.
And I think family is a loose definition, right? It doesn't have to be a nucleus family. But I think that's something useful to ponder on. Let my actions speak louder than my words. I haven't bought that one-way ticket yet. So absolutely, I'm still here. And I think, again, if you look at my actions, I was asked to serve on this panel. I was asked to help with Gondwana, with the Minister of Finance, even with Allan Gray. And I did so passionately, and I did so for free, right? Especially in the other three cases. My kids are still here. My kids attend local schools. I go to the local hospitals. I, work right here. I pay taxes. And the reason I served on the high-level panel is because I do think we can do something dramatically impactful with our leadership. And I think leadership should be looked at in a very multidimensional way. You're a leader in your field. You've been doing this for 14 years, you say to me, right? So there are lots of people out there who look up to you, but at the same time, you are impacting society. You are impacting what people consume. So I'm in it to win it, girl. So,
totally.
Sorry.
I'm right behind. I'm right behind you. I'm right behind you. James, thank you so much for joining us. I mean, you've obviously got a really powerful perception as to how you see things and the changes that you want to make in the space that you thrive in. Thank you. And I envy the people who work with you on a daily basis. They must be consuming bits and pieces every chance that they get. We will be finding ourselves in your space very soon, I'm sure.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. I hope those people do share your sentiments, though. I'm not sure I'm the easiest guy to work with, but I enjoyed working with you today, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much. That's the voice of Managing Director of Allan Gray Namibia, James Mnyupe, who came through to drop them gems.